Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Coming up this week, Perplexity unveils a new feature that pits it directly against Siri on iPhone. A new research paper from Google explains why we're entering a new era of AI agents with superhuman capabilities, a new tool that will transform the way you do user research, and a lawsuit against Uber that could have significant consequences for product designers. Stay tuned for all of that and more, and if you enjoy the briefing, hit the subscribe and the like button. So first up, Perplexity has released the Perplexity Assistant on iOS. Voice Assistant uses web browsing and multi-app actions to allow users to book reservations, send emails and calendar invites, play media, and more, all from within Perplexity's iOS app. Speaking as part of its release this week, their CEO said that he was torn between waiting to launch until it was perfect or shipping it early. He said that the Apple engineer inside him said that he should wait until it's perfect, but the Perplexity engineer in him said that he should do otherwise. Meanwhile, Apple's Siri product team is probably looking on with a mixture of envy and bemusement this week. How Apple managed to mess this opportunity up so badly will probably be the topic of MBA classes for years to come. But Perplexity has its own challenges to contend with. A perceived lack of differentiators is seemingly prompting some users to cancel their subscriptions. And with rumors that OpenAI is happy to buy Chrome if Google is forced to sell it, their new browser needs to ship pretty fast. Also this week, Grok is getting new capabilities that will allow it to see the world around it. Grok Vision lets users point their phones at objects like products, signs, and documents and ask questions about them. It's yet another example of AI companies playing catch-up with each other and brings Grok in line with similar features released from Google earlier this year. It looks like we're still on the lookout for defensible moats for AI companies. And speaking of a lack of defensible moats, a new open source alternative to 11 Labs called Dia has shipped this week, with some super realistic voices that actually sound a lot better than 11 Labs, in my opinion at least. So if you take a look at these two examples, in the first example, we'll take a look at how Dia manages to pronounce this transcript.
Dia is an open weights text-to-dialogue model.
You get full control over scripts and voices.
Wow, amazing.
Try it now on GitHub or Hugging Face.
And this is how 11 Labs does the same thing.
Dia is an open weights text-to-dialogue model.
You get full control over scripts and voices.
Wow, amazing. Haha.
Try it now on GitHub or Hugging Face.
Now, it may be that Dia has purposely chosen examples that make it sound better than 11 Labs, but in my view at least, Dia does a really good job here and actually sounds better than 11 Labs. And speaking of generative AI audio, Linea has released a new feature this week called Pulse, which takes everything that's happening across your product development teams and transforms it into an easy-to-digest content feed. The content feed is available in both text and audio, and users can subscribe to get updates from specific teams or across their entire org. Now, this is a neat use of generative AI in the workplace, and it's a very handy way for product teams to keep stakeholders in the loop with everything that's happening. But could this ultimately disrupt the way that development teams build product and spark the end of the need for things like daily stand-ups or regular stakeholder update meetings? What do you think? Would you use something like this? Let me know in the comments below. And speaking of AI disruption, here's some analysis from this week which shows how use cases are changing year on year. And you can see that some of the biggest risers for generative AI use cases include things like healthier living, generating images, and generating code. So we're seeing more users use tools like ChatGPT for these specific use cases. And one thing that I thought might be quite interesting is to consider which companies might be at risk from the rise of these use cases. As you can see, for example, if more users turn to ChatGPT and other tools for healthier living, then this poses a potential existential threat for fitness apps like MyFitnessPal, for example. So tech companies no longer have to think about their peers as competition, but also the disruptive impact of tools like ChatGPT if more users are turning to them for use cases that they would traditionally offer to their customers. We'll talk more about the disruptive effect of AI on SaaS in just a moment. But first, let's take a look at some tools you can use. And the first one this week is something called NoTab. So if you're somebody who constantly has multiple different tabs open at the same time, then NoTab is a product that's definitely worth checking out. What it allows you to do is to preview tabs in your browser without having to open a new window. And as part of this, you can launch multiple different pop-ups and resize those windows. And you can also pin those windows within your browser without ever having to create a new tab. So if you're somebody who constantly opens up new tabs whenever they find something interesting on the web, then NoTab could be something of interest. And next is a company called Listen Labs. And this week, they confirmed that they had raised 27 million in funding. And so the way this works is it allows users to run thousands of interviews with real humans and uncover what those users want. But it doesn't just conduct the interviews, it also then transcribes the interviews and transforms that into an easy-to-read document that can be shared with colleagues. So if you're looking at conducting user testing at scale, then this tool called Listen might be something worth checking out. And the final product this week is something called Vendor. And what this does is it allows you to compare how much you're paying for your SaaS products versus other people with industry benchmarks. So for example, this includes a whole bunch of different SaaS products like Slack, Zoom, DocuSign, Atlassian, Figma, and a whole bunch of others. And it allows you to then benchmark how much you're paying for that product versus other people in the market. Now, this is particularly helpful for enterprise teams, but let's say, for example, I search for Figma. It'll then give me the median amount that people pay for Figma, in this case, just over $22,000, along with the high of $78,000 and a low of $7,000. So if you're looking for ways to keep your CFO happy, then take a look at Vendor. And speaking of ways to keep your CFO happy, over on Substack this week, I take a look at some new mini apps you can use and build at work using AI. And one of those is a SaaS spend tracker. So this is something that you can vibe code into existence, and it essentially allows you to input all of the different SaaS products that you use day to day at work. So things like Slack, Zoom, Google Workspace. And what it does is it gives you a monthly breakdown of how much that costs, along with an annual breakdown, and it highlights your most expensive subscription and least expensive subscriptions. This is part of a collection of new mini apps that you can build at work. Others include an appraisal/performance review feedback collector, a note taker with a creative twist, and a coffee roulette tool that encourages colleagues to get to know each other and resolve any conflict. So if you're looking for ideas on simple apps that you can build and use at work, then head over to Substack this week. Now let's take a look at some product data and trends to stay informed. And this week, a new research paper from Google has suggested that the era of experience is now upon us. So for some context, in this graph, it describes 3 different distinct AI eras. So it starts off with the era of simulation, which is where AI played games like chess, and then moved into the era of human data. So this is where AI consumed human data for its training purposes. And now, according to Google's researchers at least, this is where AI now enters the era of experiences. This is where AI models don't rely on human data anymore, but instead they will interact with the real world to generate new insights from the data that it consumes. Ultimately, they say, experiential data will eclipse the scale and quality of human-generated data. In the paper, they say that a new generation of AI agents will acquire superhuman capabilities by learning predominantly from their experiences. And they say that the consequences of this will be that the future will be profoundly different from anything that we've seen before. Experiential learning will unlock unprecedented capabilities, they say, in everyday life, and perhaps the most transformative effect, they say, will be the acceleration of scientific discovery. AI agents will autonomously design and conduct experiments in fields like material science, medicine, or hardware design, and by continuously learning from the results of these experiments, these agents could rapidly explore new frontiers of knowledge, leading to the development of novel materials, drugs, and technologies at an unprecedented pace. So commentators are saying that this is Google taking a leap ahead of its rivals here by kickstarting this new era of experiential AI. So it'll be interesting to see how rivals like OpenAI and Anthropic respond to this. And speaking of OpenAI, this week it was reported that ChatGPT search now has over 41 million active users in Europe for the 6-month period ending March 31st. But here's the important thing, which is that this is actually up from 11 million 6 months earlier. So we've seen it go from 11 million users using ChatGPT search just 6 months ago up to 41 million. Google still has roughly 10x the amount of search traffic, but how long will this continue? Earlier this week, it was confirmed that Gemini now has over 350 million users, but ChatGPT has over 1 billion. If the rate of growth for ChatGPT search continues, then it's not unrealistic to assume that eventually ChatGPT could overtake Google in search. And speaking of user numbers, as part of its earnings report this week, Netflix confirmed that it now has over 700 million users globally. And in its letter to shareholders, it says that it now has over 9% of viewing time in the UK, which is just ahead of YouTube's 7%, but that linear TV still accounts for 50%. Meanwhile, new analysis from Alex Partners suggests that over 100 mid-sized SaaS vendors are getting squeezed by AI as it becomes easier for generative AI to replicate applications at a fraction of the cost. As part of this analysis, they say that the median net dollar retention rate has fallen from 120% in 2021 to 108% in 2024. This analysis also explores the idea that the SaaS model itself is ripe for reinvention. So they say that traditional SaaS depends heavily on the user interface, structured data workflows, and seat-based pricing. But AI agents don't need dashboards, they can function without rigid data hierarchies, and ultimately, this calls into question the relevance of the SaaS model itself. As part of this analysis, they say that over 50% of mid-sized SaaS companies expect to experience significant changes in their business model over the next year, with 40% saying that they expect moderate changes in their business model. So already some companies are starting to pivot where they move towards an outcome-based pricing model for AI agents. But given that we're just at the start of the AI agent experience, then it's easy to see just how threatened SaaS companies might be if AI agents continue to get more sophisticated. And speaking of AI impacting business models, this week it was confirmed that Pinterest is becoming overwhelmed with AI-generated content. Now, this isn't news to anyone who actually regularly uses Pinterest, but it's now been confirmed that 12 out of 16 of Pinterest's top trends report in April featured AI-generated content. And this is problematic not just for diluting the user experience, because not everyone wants to see AI slop, but it's problematic for the company's business model as well, because AI-generated content is less valuable for training purposes. Pinterest recently updated its terms of service to let users know that it will use their creations for model training. But for it to be valuable to third parties, the company needs to ensure that it can exclude AI-generated content from its training. So if you think about it, if most of the content on Pinterest is ultimately AI-generated, that is less valuable to AI models because they don't want to risk model collapse by only training themselves on AI-generated content. Pinterest isn't alone in this problem, and this week it was confirmed that one of the top videos of the week on YouTube is an AI-generated pug who saves the life of a baby who gets blown out of a plane crash, which has amassed over 400 million views. And finally, if you're currently designing a cancellation journey for a product that you work on, then this lawsuit is worth keeping up to date with. This week, the FTC filed a lawsuit against Uber, alleging that the company is forcing users to navigate as many as 23 screens and perform 32 actions just to be able to cancel their Uber One subscription. So the lawsuit outlines a number of different charges against Uber, and this includes things like when users are signing up for Uber One, customers are wrongly promised savings of $25 a month. Uber charges consumers before their billing date, and when customers try to cancel, Uber makes it extremely difficult. On top of the multiple screens they have to navigate and actions they have to perform, some users are also told that they need to contact customer support to cancel, but are then given no way to contact them. Now, to me, this does seem like a really short-sighted way of generating short-term cash. If you were the product person in charge of this, yes, you might generate some additional revenues, but surely the bitter taste that you leave in consumers' mouths by making it really difficult to cancel their account means that those users are less likely to reactivate in the future. And with reactivations being such an important part of a subscription model, this does indeed, if true, appear to be pretty short-sighted. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And that's it for this week. Thanks very much for listening and watching. I'll be back next week with another briefing.